Jayden Daniels joins the most elite fraternity in all of college football, perhaps even in all of college sports, winning the 2023 Heisman Trophy.
You are Locked On LSU, your daily podcast on the LSU Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
All right, what's up, y'all? Welcome into Locked On LSU. Thank you for making us your first listen every single day. Of course, we are free and available wherever you get your podcasts, and we are part of the Locked On Network, your team every single day. Well, he did it after all of the campaigning of all of you and I talking so much the last few weeks and even really the past month, 2 months about how deserving Jayden Daniels truly was of the Heisman Trophy, truly is deserving of the Heisman Trophy. Jayden Daniels has now been enshrined in the history of college football as the 2023 Heisman Trophy winner. Incredibly well deserved. Proud of Jayden, proud of this football program, proud of the entire team of helping him get to that point because of course it's an individual award and Jayden Daniels absolutely should be recognized for his individual achievements because I've said it so many times. Jayden Daniels carried this team on many more than just one instances over the past season, but it wouldn't be here without the offensive line. Of course, finalists for the Joe Moore Award. It wouldn't be here without Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas and Mike Denbrock and quarterback coach Joe Sloan and Brian Kelly and the supporting cast around him. So, proud of that team, proud of him, proud of this LSU football creative team that went to such great lengths to campaign for him for this award, whether it was That Kid Jayden 4-part docuseries, whether it was just straight fact that LSU football was putting out there statistically, the awesome graphics, the videos. Shout out to Matt Tornquist for putting out some really, great content throughout the last couple of weeks or so. So just proud overall of him, of that team, and proud, of course, to be an LSU Tiger. Today's edition of Locked On LSU is brought to you by Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege and use code Locked On College for a first deposit match up to $100. Daily fantasy sports made easy. All right, let's get into it. Jayden Daniels wins the Heisman Trophy. I was lucky enough and fortunate enough to be in New York for the Heisman Trophy ceremony. So if you're looking at me thinking, wow, she looks rough, it's because sleep has been an incredibly short supply over the last few days, whether it's just being in New York or truly the longest travel day in America yesterday, early morning radio yesterday, and then radio all throughout the day today. So sleep has been in short supply. I am not complaining because getting to be there was truly, a bucket list item. It felt like a once in a lifetime opportunity. So I was very, very grateful for my time there. But now I will be very, very grateful for at least a couple hours of sleep, which is not something that I can say that I've had in the last few days, but it was a surreal experience. Just as a sports fan to be there at the Heisman Trophy ceremony, but especially getting to see the quarterback of the team that I love getting to win that award. It was truly, truly something special. And Jayden Daniels winning that award does a lot for me. First and foremost, let's look outside of the grand scheme of just this LSU influence, and let's just look at the Heisman Trophy itself. I had said several times throughout this Jayden Daniels campaign, look, if the Heisman Trophy is just going to be an award about the quarterback on the best team, then let's call it that. Let's not call it the Heisman Trophy because the Heisman Trophy goes to the best player in college football. And I kind of started to grow this. Maybe distrust isn't the right word. Disrespect is maybe a little bit too strong of a word. But I had it started to grow this, maybe lack of appreciation for the players that were getting recognized. I'll go back to last year. I thought Bryce Young and Hendon Hooker were two of the best quarterbacks in all of college football. I thought Bryce Young absolutely deserved to get the award 2 years in a row. It doesn't happen very frequently, and maybe that's really ultimately was the reason why he didn't get an invitation to New York last year. But I looked at it and thought, look, those are the two of the best players in college football. And they didn't even get invites to New York City. And that's no disrespect to CJ Stroud and to Caleb Williams and the rest of the quarterbacks that Max Duggan, the rest of the quarterbacks that did get invites to New York City. But I'm thinking, man, if those two guys don't even get recognized, then what is this award all about? I was worried that Jayden Daniels was not going to get the the accolades and the recognition that he deserved simply because he plays on a 9-3 football team. Simply because he didn't have that big time game that LSU won. He had several big time games, period. Several big time games that LSU lost simply because Jayden Daniels can't tackle, simply because Jayden Daniels can't play defense, simply because Jayden Daniels did everything that he possibly could have done in those games. But the defense gave up 700 yards and 52 points to Ole Miss and let Jalen Milroe run for 150 yards and 4 touchdowns. Jayden Daniels doesn't have any control over that. I don't think Jayden Daniels should be penalized for that. But a lot of people believed that a Heisman Trophy winning quarterback shouldn't be on a 9-3 team. That a Heisman Trophy winning quarterback should do more to help his team win football games. And I think that that kind of sentiment came from people that truly just didn't watch LSU football this past year. And that's fine. Maybe it came from Pac 12 fans. I talked about it on last week's episode of a friend of mine who, frankly, is not a massive college football fan, just kind of watched for the conference championship games that I think Michael Penix should win. I said, well, I think that you feel that way because you didn't watch Jayden Daniels and the heroics that he did throughout the entirety of this season. So that is one thing that Jayden Daniels winning the Heisman Trophy does for me. It reinstills faith in the award that it is truly going to the most deserving player in all of college football. But that's more of a Heisman thing, more of a big picture thing. I want to get into what this means for LSU, and we'll get into that coming up next. Passion, drive, and patience. That is what brings home the winning trophy, and it's also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything that you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and so much more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you will always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every single time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. So with all the parts that you need at the prices that you want, it is so easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. All right, thanks again for making Locked On LSU your first listen every single day. We are part of the Locked On Network, your team every single day, and some very exciting things going down at the Locked On Network because Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every single league. So go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. All right, rolling along here on Locked On LSU, Jayden Daniels takes home the 2023 Heisman Trophy. And it reinstills faith in me and the integrity of the award, that it's not just the quarterback on an undefeated team award. No, it truly goes to the best player in college football because that is what Jayden Daniels is. But let's look into what this means for LSU, because you now Jayden Daniels becomes the third player in the history of LSU to bring home the Heisman Trophy. Billy Cannon, of course, wins it. And then 60 years later, 60 years between Heisman Trophy winners, between Billy Cannon and Joe Burrow. Now only 5 seasons separate Joe Burrow and Jayden Daniels. That you went 60 years without a Heisman Trophy winner. And now you have two, really, in the span of a college career. at LSU between Joe Burrow in 2019 and now Jayden Daniels in 2023. And it is crazy to think about that. Two Heisman Trophy winning quarterbacks across 4 years and 5 seasons. Going back to some of the Les Miles eras of us LSU fans sitting there thinking, can we just complete a forward pass? Can we just please be adequate on offensively? Because you had championship caliber defenses and quarterbacks in offenses that were racking up 80 yards a game. You were beating Alabama 9-6 in those years. It was miserable to watch some of those offenses. And watching some of those offenses, thinking to myself, man, LSU will never have a Heisman Trophy winning quarterback because this is just what LSU football is. Because LSU football is just elite on defense and below average offensively, which is crazy to now see where we are as an LSU football team in 2023, best offense in the country and a miserable defense, both incredibly frustrating. Both makes you want to pull your hair out because you don't have a side. You have one side of the field that's taking care of their business and then some, and the other side of the field that's absolutely miserable to watch. So I think that shows the progression and the evolution of this LSU football program. That you went 60 years without a Heisman Trophy winning player. You went 60 years without representation of that person who was hoisting the Heisman Trophy. Of course, you had Heisman Trophy finalists, Tyrann Mathieu being one of them, but not ultimately being the winner. We went 60 years and now just 5 seasons. That is incredibly impressive to see the turnaround of this football program. You have a Heisman Trophy winner and the Golden Spikes Award winner in the same year. That's something that no other SEC program in the history of sports has done. I believe LSU is only the second school in history to have a Golden Spikes Award winner and a Heisman Trophy winner. That shows to me, beyond just the LSU football program, that if you're one of the best athletes in the country, you look at it and you say, well, why wouldn't I go to LSU? LSU is one of the greatest brands in all of college sports. And not only can I go to LSU and win a lot of games and have a really great time and make a lot of money via NIL, but I can also win championships and I can also be recognized at the height of my sport, whether it's baseball, whether it's women's basketball, whether it's football. Looking at this year in review for LSU, that now in a calendar year, you won a women's basketball national championship. You won a college World Series. You had a player get taken number 1 and number 2 in the MLB draft. You had the Golden Spikes Award winner and now the Heisman Trophy Award winner with the number 1 offense in all of college football. And you were damn near getting to Atlanta and possibly being a college football playoff contending team if your defense just stepped up a little bit more, a few more times throughout this past season. So if you're in high school, you're a 4 or 5-star recruit in whatever sport you might be in and whatever sport you might be competing in. You're trying to find that next step. You're trying to find the place that will set you up for success. Set you up for success in college and set you up for success beyond. Why not LSU? In fact, beyond just why not LSU, show me a place that can set you up for success better than LSU can. Because this calendar year of 2023 shows me, and I think probably shows a lot of you, that LSU is the place that can get you there. That you are going to have all of the resources at your disposal to get you there. But there's a lot of schools that have the resources at their disposal to get you there, but only LSU, at least this past calendar season, has proven that they actually can. So it's massive for the brand of LSU, the brand recognition. And if we want to look at just football here, beyond just the brand, this is so massive for LSU football recruiting, specifically at the quarterback position. Because I just said, hey, look, 10 years ago, we were all thinking, man, can we just complete a forward pass here? When we were all trying to convince ourselves that, hey, maybe Danny Etling is a good quarterback. No shade to Danny Etling, no disrespect to Danny Etling, but he wasn't necessarily a Heisman Trophy caliber quarterback. We were thinking, hey, maybe he is good. Danny Etling is a good quarterback. Crazy how much things can change in just the span of less than 10 years. That was when I was in college. That wasn't that long ago. Um, but if you are either a quarterback recruit, looking at Bryce Underwood, who now LSU is one of the favorites to land the number one quarterback in the 2025 class, or if you are a quarterback in the transfer portal, you can't help but look at what LSU has done with both Joe Burrow and Jayden Daniels. That you had both Joe Burrow and Jayden Daniels in their first years at LSU. They were good, not great. Let's not forget Joe Burrow in 2018. He was just the quarterback at LSU. It wasn't until 2019 that he became Joe Burrow. Let's look at Jayden Daniels in 2022. We were asking ourselves, hey, Jayden, could you maybe just throw the football? Hey, Jayden, if you maybe could just take a few risks, take a little bit more time, go through your progressions, move the ball downfield instead of electing to run with your legs on every single play. Maybe, just maybe, this offense could be a little bit more electric. Now you look in 2023, Jayden Daniels is the best deep ball passer in America. He even said it in his Heisman Trophy acceptance speech, which if you haven't seen it, if you haven't heard it, I highly, highly recommend that you go take a listen, because if you don't know Jayden Daniels or his personality, I think that's a perfect encapsulation of just who he is as a person off the field. I promise you, despite what some people might say about the elegance of the speech, I thought it was pretty darn great. So I highly recommend you take a listen to it, because it was really good. He even said in his speech, they said I was too skinny, so I put on weight. They said that I didn't take enough risks, so I started to develop as a deep ball passer. I went into the lab and I did everything that I could to be that quarterback that could take more of those risks. He did everything that was asked of him. So you look at two quarterbacks in a 5-year span, 4-year, 5-season span, and say the meteoric rise, the insane development that two of those quarterbacks have made at LSU. That if I'm a quarterback, either in high school or in the transfer portal, I look at what those two have accomplished and say, look, I don't like where I am in my situation right now, but I can go to LSU and be developed. That I think Brian Kelly and this entire recruiting staff can even afford to be a little bit pickier and choosier at the quarterback position, because they now have the skins on the wall that if you can be great if you come to LSU. And I think that's even a statement to be made to receivers and offensive linemen across America in the transfer portal, to say, hey, I can be part of something incredibly special under Brian Kelly and offensive coordinator Mike Denbrock. I think it's a massive, massive statement and message to every offensive player across America that you can be special if you're here at LSU. Joe Burrow, Jayden Daniels, you can be next. And I think that's huge. And I do want to get into more of what LSU should do in the transfer portal at the quarterback position. We'll get into that on tomorrow's edition of Locked On LSU. But there's a lot. There's so many layers to Jayden Daniels and his Heisman Trophy, what it means for LSU, what it means for this future. So I chatted with Chris Gordy of Locked On SEC. We kind of hit on all of those layers. So we'll get into my conversation with Chris Gordy coming up next, after just a couple of words from our sponsors. All right, I want to tell you about Prize Picks, because Prize Picks truly is the most fun that I've had, making up to 25 times my money this football season. And now I can play during basketball season too. So all you have to do is just select 2 or more players, pick more or less on their projected stats, and then place your entry. It's that easy. And also, it's so super fun around this time of year because you got football and basketball season. So you can now pick combo projections across college football, football in general and basketball from the Specials League. So a league created specifically for combo projections that includes 2 or more players from different sports or leagues. So for example, LeBron James and Travis Kelce at a 10.5 combo of 3 points made and receptions. It is an absolute blast. I love it, and I know you will too. So go to prizepicks.com/locked-on-college and use code Locked On College for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, that's prizepicks.com/locked on college and use code locked on college for a first deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks, daily fantasy sports made easy.
Right along here, locked on SEC, and the SEC claims yet another Heisman Trophy on Saturday night. And joining us now, host of Locked On LSU, she is Caroline Fenton. She is up there in New York. She was at the Heisman, all the Heisman pomp and circumstance as Jayden Daniels and LSU take home another Heisman Trophy. Caroline, how are you? Welcome in.
I'm good. It was a blast of a day yesterday, long marathon of a day at the Heisman ceremony, but was really, I mean, just a bucket list item for me personally to be able to be in New York on Heisman weekend, be able to cover the event, but a little extra special that it was somebody that we know and love.
Let's rewind a little bit because it's a pretty outstanding story. Jayden Daniels, he has the career at Arizona State. He was good, not superstar there. He comes to LSU, and it was funny at the time. I remember when he was transferring in, the whole thing was Joe Burrow had moved on. Miles Brennan had been at LSU, waited his time, and went through some injuries. And the whole thought going into 2022 was this is Miles Brennan's time. He's a sixth-year senior. This is going to be it. And they bring in Jayden Daniels from Arizona State. And it was like, well, okay, that's weird. Like, Jayden's going to come in and back up. All right, fine. And then he ends up winning the battle. Miles Brennan retires from football because, medical issues, whatever. But it was kind of a weird thing. And then Jayden has this 22 season where he's good, and LSU has this awesome year. They win the SEC West. But the biggest gripe on him was he won't let the ball go. He won't throw the deep ball, take the deep shots. Fast forward to this year, my God, like the guy just completely did a 180 as a quarterback and became one of the best deep ball throwers, in all of college football. But take me on just kind of the last 2 years of what you saw from Jayden, because what an incredible turnaround it was for him.
As LSU fans, you never want to compare to the 2019 season because it just doesn't seem fair to compare to the 2019 season, but it's a fair comparison point of that's where we want to get back to every single season and build a program where 2019 isn't the odd one out, but it's the one of many. But I think that you can't help but compare Jayden Daniels' progression to Joe Burrow's progression from 2018 to 2019. In 2018, Joe Burrow was good, not great. Joe Burrow was just the quarterback at LSU. Joe Burrow was not Joe Burrow. And the LSU team was good. A 10-win season, went to the Fiesta Bowl, but then they turn around and have this magical season in 2019. The progression of Jayden Daniels reminds me so much of Joe Burrow because we see it on the field, and I think you also saw it up here in his brain too. Like you mentioned, Jayden Daniels, if you just watch that Florida State game in 2022, you'll see in a nutshell the issues that Jayden Daniels was having. He didn't get a lot of protection up front. That was a young offensive line that had two true freshmen on the outside. He wasn't getting a lot of protection. So his first read was run. And that was really frustrating because you can't win games in the SEC simply by having your quarterback run the football. I think in that Florida game in 2022, you started to see something click. That, yeah, Jayden was still using his legs, but he was supplementing the run game with the passing game. And then you saw him in 2022 piece together a really, really great 3-game stretch between Ole Miss, Florida, and Alabama that you started to see, I think, a little bit of a peek behind the curtain of what was to come, how much more meat truly was on the bone in Jayden Daniels' passing game. And then now you see him, he's the best deep ball thrower in college football. I mean, he has more explosive plays than any other player in college football. And it's not just because of his 20-plus yard runs. It's also because of his 20-plus yard passes. And credit to Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas and his favorite targets in the long ball passing game. But to go from a guy who we all were asking, just throw the ball. Can you please just let the ball go? Can you please just try and take a few risks? Now develop into this quarterback that's like, all right, I see you open 7 yards downfield, but I'm going to go for the 35-yard deep shot pretty much every single time is incredibly impressive. And I think that's credit to Jayden Daniels, how he's been trusting himself, how he's been putting the work in behind the scenes. And it's credit to Mike Denbrock, LSU offensive coordinator, and Joe Sloan, LSU quarterbacks coach, to facilitate kind of this growth from year one to year two. It is a meteoric rise in just one calendar year.
The Heisman's such a unique award because it is a truly individual award. I mean, it's funny. I saw some of the tweets going out there that Jayden Daniels, and you got to talk with him and be at the media sessions over the weekend, but he, on the interior of his jacket, he had images of himself. And then that was contrast with Michael Penix. On the interior of his jacket, he put all his teammates' names, and everybody was like, "Oh, how selfless," and all this. And I'm going, yeah, but again, this is the most individual award. If this were some kind of like team award, okay, the Michael Penix, sure, but like Jayden should be pimping Jayden. Jayden was the team. Anybody who watched LSU this year, a historically bad defense, and he had to be great every single week. And so, yes, 3 losses, but this isn't new. I mean, there's been tons of Heisman Trophy winners with 3 losses. It was just funny, though, Caroline, on the journey of the season, that Alabama game was the game that everybody was like, oh, if he has a great game here and beats Bama, he's the Heisman favorite. He lost, and it was like almost a ton of people took him out of the running, and it was like, wait a minute, his numbers were phenomenal in the Alabama game, and then he gets knocked out in the fourth quarter, but still, like, his numbers every week just got better and better and better.
And it's interesting, a lot of Washington fans or Oregon fans or the people that were pumping the tires for Michael Penix or Bo Nix to win the Heisman, the reason why they believed that Bo Nix or Michael Penix was more deserving than Jayden Daniels was because of the record. The argument, well, who has Jayden Daniels beaten? Well, Michael Penix hasn't beaten anybody. Bo Nix hasn't beaten anybody. Washington beat those teams. Oregon beat those teams because Jayden Daniels, even in LSU's losses, and maybe Florida State might be a unique situation here, but Alabama, Ole Miss games, Jayden Daniels did everything that he possibly could. Jayden Daniels can't play defense. Jayden Daniels can't tackle. And it was the defense that lost LSU those games, that had the defense. And I say this all the time in the Locked On LSU podcast. Had the defense just been bad and not historically awful, you're probably looking at an 11-1 LSU team that went to the SEC championship game and possibly had an opportunity of getting to the college football playoff. So it's an individual award, and it's not an individual season. You can't say Jayden Daniels didn't beat those teams because he did everything in his power that he could have. And look, I thought that the inside of Michael Penix's suit was really cool. I thought it was a really cool homage to his teammates. I also thought that Jayden Daniels inside of his suit was also super, super cool. I understand that it looks like team versus me. And I'm sure that Jayden Daniels looked at the inside of Michael Penix's jacket and thought, oh no, like people are going to use this against me, aren't they? One, he did say that he didn't choose the inside of it, that the people who made his suit did that kind of as a surprise to him, which I thought was really cool. And 2, I think that we can appreciate both. I think that we can appreciate the individual performance of Jayden Daniels and acknowledge that LSU is probably a 6-6 team without Jayden Daniels. With a defense like that, with how much he meant to this team, how much he did for this team, how many games he truly did win just by himself, we can acknowledge that Jayden Daniels was LSU this year. We can also acknowledge that Michael Penix did something really cool to honor his teammates on the biggest stage in college football. Doesn't always have to be a competition. Doesn't always have to be team versus me.
More with Caroline Fenton here in just a second, but this episode presented to you by our friends over at Prize Picks, the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. They are the easiest and most exciting way for you to play daily fantasy sports. It is just you against the numbers. Instead of battling thousands of other players like pros and sharks, all that, you pick more than or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections, and you'll watch the winnings roll in. And throughout basketball season, with football season still going on, they have got combo projections. You can combine the leagues. You can include 2 or more players from different sports. You can take like LeBron James in the NBA. You can take Travis Kelce in the NFL and do the more than or less than combo of 3-pointers made and receptions. They got quick withdrawals, easy gameplay, an enormous selection of players and stat types. That's what makes Prize Picks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. If you haven't checked them out yet, please go download the app. Check them out right now. Go to the website, prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege, and use our code LOCKEDONCollege. That will get you a first deposit match up to $100. Again, that's prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege. Use our code LOCKEDONCollege for a first deposit match up to $100. It is Prize Picks, and it is daily fantasy sports Made easy. Let's talk a little bit about the ceremony because it was a little like I don't know, the suspense was kind of out the window in this day and age of sports betting and like all the FanDuel and all the sports books. They had Jayden as the overwhelming favorite after Bo Nix didn't put up a great showing in the loss in the Pac-12 title game. It was like, oh well, Jayden became the favorite. So it was one of those weird nights where like we all kind of knew. I mean, and nothing against those other guys. Michael Penix was great, and Bo Nix had an awesome season, and Marvin Harrison Jr. as well. But we kind of knew it was going to be Jayden's night. Just kind of talk about the evening, what it was like, and him winning it, and what he and Brian Kelly had to say after winning the award.
A super cool evening, and really cool to be able to learn a little bit more of the personalities of all four of the finalists. Of course, I'm most familiar with Jayden Daniels. I cover the team. But if I didn't know Jayden Daniels, I think I would have gotten a good idea for his personality, just how calm, cool, and collected he truly is. And several reporters asked him, whether it was in press conferences or smaller media scrums, "Are you nervous? How do you feel?" He was like, "No, like I'm not nervous. I never really get nervous. I'm just trying to enjoy the moment." And I think that perfectly sums up kind of who Jayden Daniels is and what his personality is. He just never gets too high and never gets too low. Too true West Coast vibes that Jayden Daniels has. It was interesting because you say we all kind of knew it was Jayden, and I could look at the Vegas odds and say, yeah, Vegas thinks it's going to be Jayden, but just being around media members from Washington, from Oregon, from the Pac-12 network, from Ohio State, from all over, you kind of got a mixed bag of, I think this player is most deserving. I prioritize this in the Heisman Trophy resume over this. So I thought, okay, maybe I'm just so invested in LSU propaganda that I thought it was maybe more of a runaway than it truly was. So it was interesting to hear different perspectives, and of course to hear from the finalists themselves of their path, how they felt, and how they got to this journey. It was a really, just really, really cool night.
It's also cool that one, it wasn't as much as a landslide as we thought. I mean, they said it was the closest vote since 2018, I believe, when Kyler Murray edged out Tua from Alabama. But really cool thing for the SEC, as that's now 4 of the last 5 winners from the SEC: Joe Burrow, Devontae Smith, Bryce Young, Caleb Williams, of course, from USC was the lone non-SEC, and then Jayden Daniels this year. And then I think Cole Kubelik even pointed out this is the 16th winner of the Heisman Trophy from the SEC. That breaks the tie with the Big Ten, which has produced 15 winners overall. I mean, I just think of, the SEC is now adding Texas and Oklahoma, so an even better chance at having future Heisman Trophy winners. But I want to talk a little bit about LSU specifically. Like, LSU went forever without a Heisman Trophy winner. Was it the legendary Billy Cannon, the Halloween run against Ole Miss? Like, it was this thing that was immortalized in SEC history and LSU history, but it was like LSU will never win a Heisman, trophy. They came, they had guys in the running like, Tyrann Mathieu and that sort of thing, but Joe Burrow really put this thing over the top in 19 when he won it. And we thought maybe we won't see that again at LSU. And now we talk about LSU, a program a decade ago who would have quarterbacks thrown for 80 yards a game. Now
Don't remind me, Gordy. Don't remind me.
2 times in a 5-year span, you have a Heisman Trophy winning quarterback at LSU. I mean, I got to think this is going to help Brian Kelly and LSU recruiting tremendously.
It has to. Because, it was 60 years between Billy Cannon and Joe Burrow. That when I was at LSU from 2015 to 2019, it was the years of, okay, if we can just complete a forward pass, maybe this team could be pretty good. Like, maybe this team could beat Alabama on a consistent basis because the defense was so good. But the quarterback play, and no disrespect to the quarterbacks of the past at LSU, but the theme at LSU was the quarterback play is just so average. You never could really get that star quarterback that could take LSU over the top. So now to have 2 quarterback Heisman Trophy winners over 5 seasons, that's so incredibly impressive. And I think it shows. And I talked about it earlier. I touched on it earlier. The meteoric rise, the rapid progression of both Joe Burrow and Jayden Daniels, I think is more telling than anything. That those 2 didn't walk into LSU as a finished product. Those 2 didn't walk into LSU as this 5-star massive household name that everybody knew and the expectation was Heisman Trophy. No. That was development that happened behind the scenes. And I think that's and across two different coaching staffs, nonetheless. So I think that's a, a, a a really I think that's telling of the LSU football program and what you can do, what you can become at LSU. And someone asked Jayden Daniels about that last night. I believe it was Shea Dixon, and he said, "Well, why not LSU?" And I can't argue with that. Why not LSU if this is going to be the product? I think another cool thing about it, looking at it hyper specifically at this team, this coaching staff, and Brian Kelly himself. Brian Kelly's been coaching for 30 plus years. He's been in this a long time. He's coached a lot of really good teams. He's been to several college football playoffs. He's only had, other than Jayden Daniels, one other Heisman Trophy finalist, and that was Manti Te'o in 2012. He's been coaching for 30 plus years. This is his first Heisman Trophy winner, and it only took him 2 years at LSU to produce a Heisman Trophy winner. So I think whenever everyone was asking, why would Brian Kelly leave Notre Dame and the tenure that he has there to go to LSU? Well, it's players like Jayden Daniels that want to go to programs like LSU. That is the reason why Brian Kelly made that switch from Notre Dame to LSU, because you just recruit at a higher level at a program like LSU.
Last one for you, Caroline. The voting results came out, and Alabama's Jalen Milroe was in there at 6, and he had 73 points. And we can't help but kind of turn the page and start to look ahead to 2024. And I saw some of the early Heisman betting odds came out, and of course Jalen Milroe is up there from Alabama.
Yeah.
Carson Beck, Georgia, he'll be in the conversation. Jackson Dart at Ole Miss going to come back for another year, and Quinn Ewers from Texas, who we see as a chance to win a championship this postseason. He'll be an SEC quarterback next year. But if I just threw some of those names out there, who would you pin as maybe the early favorite? I'll probably go on Milroe. I mean, he was fantastic as the season went along. It's hard not to pin him. But who would be your early look ahead to next year favorite from the SEC?
I'm with you. I think it would have to be Milroe for the same reason that Jayden Daniels, made such a massive progression from year to year. Jalen Milroe made that progression in a year. Jalen Milroe looked like he was going to be replaced with the transfer portal quarterback against Texas, ultimately got benched against South Florida, and then now is leading Alabama to the college football playoff after taking down the number one team in the country that hasn't lost in a game in 2.5 years. Jalen Milroe looks like a completely different quarterback, a quarterback that could barely even complete an intermediate pass. Now it looks like he's going to be the Heisman Trophy favorite. So I think if he continues to make those progressions, and Alabama being such a young team this year, they're going to be older, more experienced next year. I think Alabama as a team is going to be better. And let's not act like being the quarterback on one of the best teams in the country doesn't help your Heisman odds. But if it's not Milroe, it's got to be Carson Beck for the same reason that he has gotten better week over week over week, and he's going to be quarterbacking a very, very good Georgia team. So I think it's got to be one of those two.
Yeah, and as the numbers show, wins and losses don't matter as long as you're putting up phenomenal, stupid numbers. You can win this thing.
All right, thanks for making Locked On LSU your first listen every single day, and thanks to Chris Gordy for having me on Locked On SEC. You can check out Chris Gordy and Locked On SEC on your preferred podcast platform and on YouTube, and of course, you can find Locked On LSU there as well. Like I mentioned, we'll get into what LSU does with the future of the quarterback position, because I think we need to adequately enjoy all of the love and attention that Jayden Daniels and this LSU football program are getting, rightfully so. But now, what comes next? Life after Jayden Daniels. What LSU should do at the quarterback position? Do they dip into the transfer portal for a quarterback? We'll get into that on tomorrow's edition of Locked On LSU.